Hi all, my name is Mindy Barrett-Perlman, and this project is something that it's kind of a conglomeration of things that I do for clients and then things that I have done since the pandemic has started on my YouTube channel, that sort of thing. So this project is a mixture of integrated trauma treatment information, so psychoeducation, and then a demonstration of the techniques I used, of empirically supported treatments of trauma, like trauma-sensitive yoga, animal-assisted therapy or intervention, cognitive behavioral therapy, sensorimotor psychotherapy, somatic experiencing, and EMDR. And all of those have been shown to be helpful in the treatment of trauma and PTSD. Diane Langberg has one of my favorite definitions of trauma, and she says trauma involves intense fear, helplessness, loss of control, and threat of annihilation. Such fear and helplessness and the threat of non-existence silences a person, it alienates them, and it renders them powerless. So if you have been living on planet Earth for the last 6 months, then maybe some of those feelings are familiar to you. The feeling of fear, the feeling of powerlessness, the change without control, the loss of agency, the threat of death, loss of a family or loss of income, the loss of freedom of going places, and then the loss of freedom of having to wear something on your face. So all of those things, it kind of builds up to what is called pandemic trauma. So there are 2 types of trauma. The first type, Everstein and Everstein, or Breer and Scott, talk about acute trauma, which is a one-event trauma. And then they talk about complex trauma, which is prolonged or repeated. And it's interpersonal, it can be abuse, it can be war. So Lisa Levers says that pandemic trauma, it affects the entire population. So here's the thing, it has no rules, it has no boundaries of age or gender or race or religion or socioeconomic class. So everybody on planet Earth is experiencing some sort of trauma symptom or trauma after this trauma event of a pandemic. And then right now we are experiencing what Lisa Levers calls cumulative stress, which means that ongoing stress, it builds over weeks and over months, possibly over years after the initial event. So Everstein and Everstein say that an adult response to pandemic trauma or a disaster, which is it's a public health disaster, so pandemic trauma, might be frustration, confusion, mood swings, anxiety, emotional problems, depression, bursts of anger, and many more symptoms. Many of them are found in the DSM-5 under the PTSD symptomology or the acute stress symptomology. Many of the symptoms are also the symptomology for PTSD. And if you have previous trauma or have been diagnosed with PTSD before the pandemic, then your PTSD may have returned, or you may have been feeling re-traumatization, or things that you thought you had processed through with good therapy years ago, all of a sudden things are coming up, or new things are coming up. And that is very normal. Julie Yernick talks about bottom to top healing. And for trauma, a good example of this, a good place that I felt, it's in one of my videos, but I felt it was a great way to kind of give agency of freedom to people, is looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Julie Ulrich talks about bottom to top healing. And I think one of the best ways, especially when the pandemic began, one of the best ways to explain and to bring some normalization to the pandemic and to how people were feeling is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so here's the hierarchy of needs, and I'm sure that you can find it lots of places, but I will bring this forward. So here's the hierarchy of needs. And right now, most of us are pretty much in these bottom 2. So we're in the safety zone, and we're in the food, water, like health, shelter. That's kind of where we're at. But as we get mentally healthier, as we move on up to the self-esteem, to the morality, to problem solving, that sort of thing. So if you are feeling, I was talking with some clients and there's, why am I feeling so out of control? Why am I triggered all the time? And it's important to remember that, yes, we may have been up in the creativity, morality, problem-solving zone. You may have had that self-actualization. But once the trauma, the pandemic trauma happened, it kind of brought us all down a peg. So maybe you weren't even up there yet, but it brought us down to needing food, water, security, and health, and sleep, breathing. And then kind of the next one is security of body, of employment, morality, and family. So many of us are still in those first two levels, and that is okay, especially for what we're going through. This is unprecedented stuff. As we move through this hierarchy of needs, what is so important for the therapist is to offer safety, stability, and predictability. And that can be difficult right now. And so that's kind of what these trauma treatments can offer during this time, or in any trauma therapy, trauma for PTSD, that sort of thing. So, and keep us helping progressing up and up and up. Trauma not only affects our emotions, but it also affects our body and our brain function. When trauma occurs, there's a stress response, and this stress response activates the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. And the hormones get turned on. So it activates the sympathetic nervous system, and the hormones of epinephrine and adrenaline get turned on. So say that somebody scared you, and that's what happens, that all of a sudden that freeze, fight, flight, it's that adrenaline, that epinephrine. And then the parasympathetic nervous system comes in and says, okay, that's enough, and turns that off once the fear is gone, and then you can go back to normal. Well, sometimes in trauma, ongoing trauma, or even in one event, and possibly even with the pandemic, when the system when our body's brain system has been activated for too long or too many times, that activation button can sometimes get stuck. So that adrenaline, that epinephrine is going, and that parasympathetic nervous system is nowhere to be found. The stress hormones get stuck and are constantly released into the blood, and they cause over-arousal and or under-arousal, and they cause hypervigilance and other PTSD symptoms. Bessel van der Kolk, Judith Herman, and David Emerson all talk about trauma and trauma memories, and how trauma memories are stored inside the body. So I have my cats here. Animal-assisted therapy. These two aren't therapy cats, but they come with me when I do, they are with me on my videos and that sort of thing. And then Sammy over here, he is a therapy dog, and I will talk about him in a minute. But they talk about trauma and trauma memories, and how it's being stored in the body long after the event has occurred. So this can show up as PTSD, as chronic pain, as avoidance, as anxiety, as depression, as intrusive memories, as chronic fatigue syndrome, as an autoimmune issue, as fibromyalgia. And sometimes the result of the ongoing trauma response can make people feel like their body is their enemy. David Emerson talks about this a lot in his yoga for trauma books, that the body being the enemy, especially after abuse, because we have the body has gone into a self-protective mode. The brain and the body have both gotten into that mode, and so the body kind of dissociates from the brain. The brain is no longer able to process what's happening with the body, so it disconnects, and it's a dissociation. And that's where all of these wonderful, awesome therapies can help. So our first therapy that we're going to talk about, or go over actually, have an example of, is trauma-sensitive yoga. So if you want to try it, if you would like to be a part of it, go ahead and get something loose on, or you can wear whatever you want, and you can be in a chair or on the floor, whatever. But I went through training and certification of trauma-sensitive yoga from the Trauma Center at the Justice Resource Institute in Boston. And I trained under David Emerson and Jen West, and they both have done extensive study with Bessel van der Kolk and without him, and with others, on yoga and trauma, and the use of yoga with trauma. And I use trauma-sensitive yoga to help trauma survivors begin to reconnect with their bodies, befriending their bodies again. Bessel van der Kolk says that the goal of treatment of PTSD is to help people live in the present without feeling or behaving according to irrelevant demands belonging to the past. So the present, especially after trauma, is so much different. So now it's trying to rejoin the body and the brain, trying to get that interoception. That's what it is the body and the brain starting to, that feeling. I use invitational language, and I offer choice as a way for people to feel safe and empowered, and give them the agency of who they are and who they want to be. And trauma-sensitive yoga is about a clear, authentic, shared experience between the therapist or between the yoga instructor and the client, and then utmost respect and positive regard. And it reminds the survivor that they are so worthy, so valuable, so important, and seen and heard. So we'll do a little bit of trauma-sensitive yoga. When you're ready, finding a space where you may feel secure, maybe grounded, maybe rocking a little bit from side to side, beginning to find some quiet. Maybe quiet in the body, maybe quiet in the mind. But recognizing that this is your time, this is your space, there's no judgment, there's no bar that you have to reach to, there's no failure, just movement and being present in the moment. So maybe rocking, if it feels okay, maybe rocking it a little bit from front to back, if that's available to you. Remembering always that if you ever need to lean up against the wall, if you ever need to use pillows, if you ever need anything, remember that this is supportive for you. So use the things that work for you. And from here, if you would like, maybe doing a little bit of a circling with the torso. So we're kind of involving the brain here. We're getting a little bilateral movement. We're getting some endorphins flowing. And then maybe taking it the other way. And doing this at your own pace and what feels good for you. Remembering that this is your choice. This is your time. If something doesn't feel good, then don't do it. Like, please stay away from it, and then join when you're ready to come back. And then maybe, when you're ready, possibly sitting it up kind of taller. And if you'd like, maybe dropping that chin to the chest. And then maybe lifting our eyes towards the ceiling or sky. And then again, dropping that chin to chest. And then eyes to the sky. And maybe bringing that back to center. And when you're ready, dropping one ear towards one shoulder. As we're doing this, dropping that, maybe possibly recognizing any sensations in any part of the body. For example, right now, I feel very much a lot of tension right here. So you listen to your body, recognize you may not even feel it in your neck. You may not feel it at all, and that's okay. You may feel it way down on the other arm or down in your feet. Wherever you're feeling it, recognize that, and that is perfect. That is you. When you're ready, bringing that to center and dropping to the other side, taking your time and doing what feels best for you at this present moment. Now, as we're on this side, recognizing, are there any sensations on this side? Does it feel different than the other side? So recognizing those differences without judgment, without trying to fix it, just being curious. So this is all about curiosity, recognizing maybe instead of the tightness how it was on this side, for me, I'm feeling a little more tightness in the center of my neck, and I'm feeling it more in my arm as well. So you take stock and recognize where you might be feeling things at. And again, if you don't feel it at all, that is perfectly fine and normal. And bringing this back to center. If you like, possibly moving our head, taking that chin, maybe moving it over to the shoulder, and then bringing that back to center. And when you're ready, taking it over to the other side, and bringing that back to center. Maybe let's do that one more time each side if that was available to you, if it felt good for you. So taking that over to one side, and maybe as you're doing it the second time, where are you feeling this, or what are you feeling? Sometimes it might not even be body feelings. Sometimes your emotions may be triggered. So recognize that as well. And know that you are not alone in that. If you ever need to take a beat, take a break, and rest, that is perfectly normal and perfectly fine. So maybe sitting it up a little tall, we'll do a sun breath. And this breath isn't like normal yoga breath. This breath you can breathe freely however you feel best to breathe. So you can inhale and exhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth, or inhale nose, or mouth. So whatever breathing is most comfortable for you. If it's available for your arms to lift, we're gonna do that. If not, then feel comfortable to go wherever your arms will let you go. So possibly when you're ready, maybe lifting those arms up, nice big sun breath, inhale. And then possibly pressing those hands down and exhale, recognizing where are you feeling this at, or maybe what are you feeling? Inhaling it up again. And exhale. Maybe those arms are heavy, maybe they're light, maybe they're floating, maybe they feel like cement. And inhale, lift this up. And exhale, pressing this down. If you'd like, we can do that one more time. Inhale and lift this up. And then exhale, press this down. Good. When you're ready, we'll take the opposite hand. So I'm going to take my left hand and place it onto my right thigh. I'm going to take my right hand behind and kind of gently give myself a spinal twist here. As we are doing this, possibly recognizing, again, any sensations. Maybe recognizing if there's any body sensations or anything mentally or emotionally being triggered. And remember, no judgment. Not trying to fix, just recognizing and bringing in the present. So bringing ourselves back to the present and recognizing that you're in a safe space right now. And then bringing this back to center. And then maybe taking it to the other side. So gently looking over, maybe taking our right hand to that left thigh if it feels okay. Maybe taking that left hand behind and adding in that little bit of a twist. And maybe it's completely different on this side. So recognize if that's what's going on with you, or where you're feeling it at, or if you're feeling it, or what emotions are coming up. And when you're ready, bringing this back to center. Possibly, if it feels okay, maybe rolling the shoulders down and back. And maybe doing that again, rolling that down and back. If you'd like, you can go a little slower and feel every movement of that roll. And remember that you are in control of that movement. You are in a safe space. You are in control of what your body is doing right now. If you'd like, maybe taking this the other way. So maybe rolling this forward and going as slow or as quickly as you would like. Maybe lifting and feeling that motion. Or if you can't feel it, that's okay. Maybe right now you're just going through the motions. Maybe right now you're just trying to move. Maybe right now, today is just a breathing day where you're like, if I can just get my breathing in, then I'm good. And that is great. I'm so thankful that you are here and that you are doing this self-care. If you'd like, maybe leaning back a little bit, and feel free to lean back against a wall, or feel free to lean back against your hands. I'm going to kind of go back against my hands, and I've got my knees bent, and I'm going to slowly maybe drop my knees a little bit from side to side. And you can keep your feet planted, or you can pick those feet up and dropping that from side to side. Again, if that's available to you. If it's not, then don't worry. Again, be curious, being curious about how your body is moving, what you're feeling. And then maybe, when you're ready, if you'd like, maybe sitting it up tall and against that can be against a wall or a chair. And maybe lengthening through the legs and feeling that lengthening. Where did you feel that at? Possibly the backs of the legs. Possibly, since those legs have been either crossed or up, maybe you felt that in your thighs and your quadriceps. Maybe recognizing where you're feeling that at. And maybe being okay with touching those spaces. If you'd like, maybe moving those legs a little bit, maybe to release some tension if there's any going on. And then, if you're ready, if you like, go ahead and bring your right leg towards you, if that is available to you, if that works for you. Maybe give yourself a big hug here, and then recognize where you might feel this at. It might feel best to rock a little bit from side to side or front to back. But giving yourself this time, giving yourself this space, and maybe it feels very uncomfortable, or maybe you're not even feeling it on this leg, maybe it's all on this side. So recognizing that. And again, no judgment. There's nothing wrong. Just recognizing and being in the present. And then release. When you're ready, possibly taking it to the other side. Maybe lifting, bringing that leg in, and maybe hugging this side. And recognizing where you might feel it here. Maybe you feel it in the other leg again. Maybe you don't feel it at all. Maybe one side of your body you are feeling things and the other side you're not. And that's okay. Again, perfectly normal for trauma that you've been through. All of these things, this disconnect. So you're doing wonderful at being here, taking care of yourself, doing that self-care. And then gently releasing. Nice and slow, taking your time. We're going to go ahead and bring ourselves around and do a kind of restorative form. So take as many pillows and blankets as you would like. And laying down or sitting down however it feels comfortable for you. If it feels okay to be on your knees, then you can be here. If it feels okay to be on your side, then you can be there. If it doesn't feel comfortable at all, then feel free to lay down on your back or on your side. But I've got all my pillows and my blankets in front of me, and either on your knees or legs, whatever's comfortable, maybe kind of sitting up and then leaning forward. And you may want it even taller, so you may want to grab all of the pillows in your house and put them on top. but maybe leaning this forward and allowing yourself to possibly sink and settle into this. There may be a lot of things going on as you're doing this, a lot of feelings, a lot of thoughts, but allowing yourself to maybe find a little bit of peace, find a little bit of quiet. Maybe recognizing where you're feeling this out, being curious about that. If there are any triggers or flooding, then feel free to get out of the posture of the form and take a breath. Bring yourself back to the present. And then slowly, when you're ready, bringing this up. And if you'd like, we're going to take it to the other side. So we kind of want to make things a little even. So if you are on one side, then go ahead and move your legs. If you're on your knees, then you can possibly move off of your knees as well. But again, let's sit it up, and when you're ready, if it's available, maybe taking this forward and recognizing, are you feeling it in a totally different place on this side? Finding that quiet, possibly. Maybe that body is a little bit quieter. Maybe those muscles aren't as tense. Recognizing. And again, not fear, not failure, not concern, but curiosity and acceptance, no judgment. And when you're ready, slowly beginning to bring yourself back up. And that up and down, recognize how you're feeling there. I know sometimes with the chronic fatigue and the fibromyalgia and other things, your blood pressure might be very low. So coming up and down might cause a headache or dizziness. Recognizing that and knowing that that's very normal, and that just take a beat, take a breath, and it should slowly subside. And just taking a little bit, maybe looking around, maybe recognizing, becoming grounded, recognizing the things around you, where you're at, again, that safe space. And then when you're ready, if you'd like, maybe finding a comfortable seated form once again, whatever that looks like for you. And we're going to bring our time to a close. So you can lie down on your back, or you can go ahead and be back in that supported child form that we just did, or you might be done. This might be good enough for you today, and that is wonderful and perfect. So bringing our class to a close. Again, maybe finding your safe space, maybe recognizing what you're feeling after the class. And if you'd like, maybe inhaling, bringing your arms up, and then possibly bringing your hands down. And just some encouraging words. If you'd like, taking our fingers to the forehead. As we leave today, let us think thoughts of love and thoughts of truth, thoughts that are kind and thoughts that encourage and uplift and do not discourage or tear down. Taking fingers to our lips. As we leave today and speak with others and ourselves, let us speak words of love and words of truth, words that encourage and uplift and do not discourage or tear down. Taking hands to heart or to heart. As we leave today, let our lives be a light of truth and a light of love, having hearts of compassion and mercy, knowing that we have not been given a spirit of fear, but the spirit of love and a sound and peaceful mind. Thank you for joining me. Have a wonderful rest of your day. So that is an example of a trauma-sensitive yoga class. That was a little bit longer, and sometimes they're long, sometimes they're short, depending on the client depending on the trauma, depending on where they're at. So that is trauma-sensitive yoga. Marguerite O'Hare talks about animal-assisted therapy or animal-assisted intervention, and it is a proven therapy. It's been proven to show decreased PTSD symptoms. So Sammy over here, he's laying down, but Sammy is a trained pet partners therapy animal. He's not a service dog. He's a therapy dog. So a service dog are the ones that, for the blind, they can go anywhere. Therapy dogs, much more restricted, and his certification things were a lot less strict. So his interactions with trauma survivors can help with depression, anxiety, reduce agitation, increase emotional well-being, because animals are comforting. And again, this is Marguerite O'Hare. She's done a lot of research on this because animals can be comforting. They are a reminder that the danger is no longer present. And those who are emotionally numb, especially like the dissociation, the mind-body dissociation, those who are numb, may find security and may find not be so numb in the presence of a therapy animal, or any animal actually. But a therapy animal can help release oxytocin, which calms the body. It's one of those calming chemicals, one of those nice calming chemicals. And petting a dog or brushing a dog or animal, horse, any sort of animal-assisted intervention animal, therapy animal, petting, touching, brushing, hugging, it releases those good calming feelings. So Sammy, when I take him to my group therapy classes, they love him. He is such a bright light, and they love just his presence. Most of the time he's sleeping, but just his presence, just him being around, them being able to hug him or touch him. He's a big dog, he's a Labradoodle. So he's got a lot of space to him. He can be held, he's got some very soft fur. So yeah, that's Sammy, and that's what I use with animal-assisted therapy. We're going to go on to sensorimotor psychotherapy. So Dr. Pat Ogden, she talks about sensorimotor psychotherapy, and it's in the same vein as trauma-sensitive yoga and as mindfulness, and as Peter Levine's somatic experiencing. So it's all about trauma happening in the movement and then being healed in the movement. It regulates that movement, that breath, the breathing, the movement, regulates the body symptoms, and then it relieves the traumatic stress. Breathing, grounding exercises, awareness, all of these are part of sensorimotor and somatic experiencing. So this is Sammy. I thought I'd give you a better look at him. So this is Sammy. He's a pet partners therapy animal, and he is a good boy. He loves it. Once he gets his vest and his handkerchief on, he is all about working. So he's all about being kind and being soft and being next to people. So this is Sammy, and he does some empirically supported therapy. So breathing, grounding, and awareness are all part of the sensorimotor psychotherapy, the Peter Levine somatic experiencing, that sort of thing. So we're going to do a little bit of a grounding exercise. We're going to do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and this is something that I do at the beginning of maybe a session, or if something's going on, or just by itself. So we want to see 5 things. So we're finding ourselves in the present. So this is when there's panic going on, anything trauma triggered going on. So we've got that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So finding yourself, 5 things that you can see. So I can see the ceiling, I can see my cat Simon, I can see the carpet, I can see the lights, I can see the chair. So 5 things that I can see that are bringing me to the present. And then 4 things that I can feel. So 4 things that I can feel Simon. I can feel the wool of this blanket. I can feel a rock. This is one of my favorite things. This is some volcanic rock from the John Muir Trail on the Sierras. So this grounds me too, because it brings back a good memory as well. So the volcanic rock, so I can feel that, or I can be feeling, this is one of those little anxiety toys, feeling that. So 4 things that you can feel. And then 3 things that you can hear. I can hear the fan. I can hear the air conditioning. I can hear the kind of the traffic outside, or actually the dripping of the sink. So that, again, bringing that to the present, bringing me to right now, this space, this place. And then Simon loves to sit on my stuff. And then 2 things that you can smell. So I can smell, I use essential oils. I'll usually use essential oils, and then we'll begin some grounding. So I can smell the oil, and then I can smell the lavender. Oh, here was another sound. So this is another sound, the singing bowl. So I love that tinkling sound. This definitely brings you back to present, that singing bowl, that tinkling sound. So, and then 1 taste, and I always like to use the lemon for the taste, because that immediately brings you back to the present. So those are some grounding exercises. And then I'll share with you one of the breathing exercises that I do. It's called 4, 4, 4, and 4. So it's square breathing. We'll inhale for 4, we'll hold it for 4, we'll exhale for 4, and we'll hold it for 4. And feel free to breathe however you want. You can breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, mouth. Again, whatever. This one today is freedom breathing. And you can use your arms too. So I'm going to inhale it for 4, 3, 2, 1, and hold for 4, 3, 2, 1, and exhale it for 4, 3, 2, 1, and hold for 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale it for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold it for 4, 3, 2, 1, and exhale for 4, 3, 2, 1, and hold for 4, 3, 2, 1. We'll do that one more time. Inhale deeply for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold it for 4, 3, 2, 1, and exhale it for 4, 3, 2, 1, and hold for 4, 3, 2, 1. So those are a few of the grounding exercises, the breathing exercises, bringing you back to the present, being able to quiet the body and quiet the mind. So eye movement desensitization and reprocessing is what I focus most on in the course this term. And it is one of the most studied and effective therapies for PTSD and trauma. I'm not certified in EMDR, so I cannot demonstrate it, but I can explain a little bit about it. EMDR uses bilateral movements or sounds. It can use pulses, movement, so that both eyes, both sides of the brain, the key is both sides of the brain are working. So we're involving that to process through a trauma memory. There are 8 phases of EMDR, and the first phase is intake and treatment plan. So making sure that you are even able to do EMDR with the person, because sometimes bringing up a traumatic memory can be physically draining and hard. So maybe somebody that's pregnant or that sort of thing. So all of this information I'm getting from Shapiro and Forrest. So the next stage is preparation. So making the client feel safe and possibly having that shared authentic counseling client experience. Then phase 3 is assessment, and you're identifying targets here. Targets are those negative events or negative memories from the traumatic experience. So, and in those negative events, we are targeting them, a specific piece of it, and holding it. It's called holding it there to be processed. And while that's happening, you're using the bilateral stimulation. Phase 4 is desensitization, and that comes back to kind of a check-in of rating the emotions and feelings and sensations. So rating them on a scale, an SUD scale. And then phase 5 is the installation phase, which means replacing negative cognitions that have lost their power. So that's what we're trying to do in 3 in assessment and using the bilateral stimulation, is trying to take that memory, that event, and make it lose its power, lose its control, lose its charge. That Shapiro and Forrest like to use charge. So we want to replace that with positive cognitions or thoughts. Phase 6 is body scan, and the body scan brings the target back to mind, and then notice if there's any negative charge still present, still attached to it. It's interesting because body scan is also used in yoga. It's also used in other mindful therapies. So it's kind of a similar thing, checking in. So checking in with yourself. I use body scan when I take people through final relaxation, when they're laying on the ground. I tell them to imagine that they are above themselves and they can look down on their bodies, and they scan from their feet all the way up to the crown of their head, and imagine that they can see colors on their bodies, and are they feeling tension, are they feeling heat, are they feeling pain? So kind of a body scan, and then that body scan bringing the target back to mind and noticing if any of that negative charge is still present. And then phase 7 is closure, making sure that the client is stable, coming in better than or leaving better than they came in. And then number 8, phase 8 is reevaluation, and that happens at the end of the first session and then at the beginning of the preceding sessions afterwards. So emotional freedom technique, Harvard Medical School has done some studies on this, on tapping. Emotional freedom technique has similar principles to EMDR. And it is done by using the meridians in the body. It's energy psychology. And for some people, it may be like, that's weird. There are studies that are done on the tapping and how it can relieve stress. So, and the studies, again, emotional freedom technique has similar principles to EMDR. David Feinstein found that there can be significant reduction in autonomic nervous system arousal through tapping and emotional freedom technique. It's energy psychology, and it can be helpful in addition with other therapies. So in addition to cognitive behavioral therapy, in addition to other standard treatments. So it is done by the therapist, or tapping can also be done self. It can be done by the client. That's one of those cool things too, is you don't have to be certified to do tapping. So the client brings, just like EMDR, the client brings to mind a stressor and thinks about that stressor and holds that stressor, that same word, holds, and then taps certain parts of the body, stressor points or meridians, energy points. So this is the first tapping point. And then right on that head, on either side of the part, on the temple, eyebrows, under the eyes, under the nose, the chin, the clavicle, under the arm, and the wrist. So that is a tapping, that is part of a tapping program. So I'll take you through a short tapping exercise, and of course Ulrich and van der Kolk talk about emotional freedom technique, or tapping is energy psychology using the fingers to tap acupressure points. Tapping brings to mind the memory stressor, and then while holding that stressor, tapping the acupressure points, which often result in a significant reduction of autonomic nervous system arousal. And I just said that all. but I found my paper. So Dr. Ariel Swartz explains the window of tolerance developed by Dr. Daniel Siegel, and it refers to the optimal zone of nervous system arousal where you are able to respond effectively to your emotions. And so when you go outside of that window of tolerance, you go into survival mode. So it's that fight, flight, freeze mode, and feeling anxious and overwhelmed and panicked is a sign that you are hyper or over aroused. Whereas when you feel numb and shut down, you are disconnected or under aroused. So when you have complex PTSD or trauma or PTSD, alternating between the two extremes happens a lot of time, and feeling stuck in one or the other is normal. So practicing an emotional regulation technique like tapping can help with bring one back into that window of tolerance, and it can help it can help build mindfulness, cultivate mindfulness, change your feelings and your thoughts, change those cognitions from negative to positive, and by observing the body as well. So we'll start off with 2 fingers, and you're going to take them, this is the karate chop, so we're taking them to the meaty part of the hand, and we bring that thought, so we're going to bring that trigger, that target thought into memory. So I'm going to do one about quarantine and COVID-19. So all this anxiety I have about COVID-19, I accept myself deeply and completely. Even though this stress and anxiety is exhausting, I accept myself no matter what. So I would have you repeat after me. That's what I would have you do. And then this anxiety, and you would repeat. This stress about COVID-19, all this stress about pandemic, all this worry about the virus. It's exhausting. All this stress. All this fear. All this fear about COVID-19 quarantine. I want to let it go, but I'm so scared. So we would go through a few, that was our first round, and then what I would do is I would check in and say, how are you feeling? If you're feeling dizzy, if you're feeling nauseous, that's very normal because we're tapping into those meridian points. So very normal. So we would do just a few rounds, maybe 5 or 6 rounds, going through things like that, the issue, the stress, the worry. And then at the end, I'll do the final round. Then, what if I have always been safe? What if I can feel grounded with my feet firmly on the ground? I am open to that. I am open to feeling calm. I am open to feeling safe. I am open to taking deep, relaxing breaths, knowing that I am safe. I am not alone. I choose to feel safe no matter what is going on in my life. I choose to feel grounded. I choose to feel calm and safe. And then we would do another check-in, and then we'd be done. So that is an example of tapping that I would do, emotional freedom technique. And then finally, cognitive behavioral therapy, it pulls all of this together. It's the therapy that is the standard treatment, the gold standard for multiple issues, and especially for trauma, taking those negative cognitions and changing them to positive truths. And one of my most favorite things that I do with my videos or with my client is I start off with a devotional. And This is from Amy Carmichael, and I was going through 40 days of prayer on my videos. So this is day 13, and it's called Infectious Fear. This is very applicable to what we've been talking about. So if God is for us, who can be against us? I'm convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. Romans 8:31. Have you ever thought how infectious fear can be? It spreads from one person to another more quickly and certainly than any of the fevers that we know so well, or viruses. You can refuse the spirit of fear, which never comes to us from God. And if he does not send it, who does? Instead, open your heart wide to the spirit of power and of love and of calm and well-balanced mind and discipline and self-control. 2 Timothy 1:7. Because fear is so infectious, let us, for the sake of others and ourselves, refuse it. Thank God, courage is as infectious as discouragement. Haven't you often felt the cheer and the strength that seem to flow from a person whose mind is fixed and firm on God? I have. And I have been thinking of another, a greater reason for refusing that spirit of fear. When we are downhearted or fearful or weak, we are saying to everyone, by the way that we look and by our timidity and not our words, if not our word, by our words, after all, the Lord can't absolutely be trusted. Somewhere near us, though, we do not see them. There are others. There are men and women who we can see, and also good angels and evil spirits who we cannot see. To all of these, when we give in to fear, we say the same dishonoring thing. We have a Savior who has never once failed us. He never will fail us. He has loved and led us and guarded us all of these years. Look to him now and pray from the barren bedrock of your heart. If that is the ground you are standing on, Lord, give me courage. And then this wonderful prayer. My Father, I have this habit of fear. Sometimes I let my fear exempt me from doing what you have asked me to do. Speak my word to this one, but Lord, I'm afraid that he'll think. Contribute to this effort, but what if I won't have enough? Help me to cross the battle line of fear that is drawn across the ground of my soul. You are for me. And nothing can stand against me. Isn't that what this is all about? That God is for us and not against us. And we are for our clients and those that we are helping and not against us and not against them. Encouraging them to use these tools, to use these therapies, these proven therapies. My last thing I wanted to share was my favorite cognitive behavioral therapy exercise that I like to use. Is to grab one of those negative cognitions. You grab one of those negative cognitions, and maybe you can write that down. And then we look at 5 things. So grabbing that cognition of the virus will never end. And asking number 1, is that thought true? Write it out. The virus will never end. Is that a true thought? I don't know. So if you don't know, if you're like, I don't know if it is, I don't know if it isn't. Number 2, is it 100% true? And so, is it 100% true that the virus will never end? No. I don't know the future. Number 3, describe how it makes you feel. So powerless, anxious, out of control, fearful. So finding those words, finding those feelings, how does it make you feel? How would you feel without that thought? Without that thought of thinking the virus is always going to be here, the cloud would be lifted. It's interesting to recognize that there's such a cloud that the quarantine and the pandemic has caused. And then describe the opposite. That's another cat. And then describe, she's deaf, so she meows very loud. That's the thing about pandemic and being socially isolated is I've had to do Zoom classes, I've had to do all kinds of things with distractions, and it is what it is. So number 5, describe the opposite of the thought. The opposite of the thought would, this virus is going to end. The troubles and the trials and the tribulations that we're going through right now are going to end. It will end. It will be over. Things will change. I don't know how they are going to, but we're not stuck in that negative cognition. We're stuck in the hope and that positive cognition. So that's one of those things that I like to go through, to use with clients, to have them write out those 5 things to get rid of those automatic thoughts. So thank you for joining me today. Thank you for taking the time and looking at all of the things that I like to do, with clients, that I like to do on the videos, and just all the things that I have learned about in these trauma courses that have just been such fire and such fuel that I can give them to others, that I can offer the psychoeducation, especially for those that have endured PTSD and trauma, or now pandemic trauma, and they don't know why they're feeling the way they are. They don't know why their bodies are acting the way they are. They don't know why they're so depressed or anxious. When we get that knowledge, when we get that brain knowledge, when we get that understanding, it brings freedom and it brings clarity. So thank you guys, and we'll see you next time, maybe on my channel.